Don't call, I'm having dinner with an old friend. The text message flashed on the screen the moment I closed my laptop after an exhausting day. The clock on the wall of my small, central Philadelphia apartment read 7:02 p.m. Outside the window, the sky was stained a faint lilac. The streetlights were beginning to flicker on like lost stars against the urban backdrop, and the sound of traffic, pedestrians, and music from the cafes drifted up from the busy street below, creating an atmosphere that felt both intimately familiar and strangely alien. I sighed, looking back at my phone. Megan, my wife's daughter, had messaged with a tone that was cold, brief yet heavy with finality, as if she wanted to cut off all communication. The 18-year-old, navigating the tumultuous transition of young adulthood, always knew how to charm strangers, but she also possessed a fierce pride that made anyone who spent too much time around her wary-eyed. Eric had poured nearly $20,000 into planning Megan's graduation party. From the upscale hotel ballroom, the three-tiered cake, the sparkling fairy lights, to every carefully chosen gift, it was all designed to make her happy, to make her feel loved. I had imagined today would be the perfect moment, a scene where Megan would beam, her eyes bright. Everyone around would remember it forever, and I, as her stepfather, as a man who cared, would witness her joy surrounded by family. But now, with just one text, everything seemed to collapse. I stood up and walked out onto the small balcony, taking a deep, bracing breath. The cold Philadelphia air prickled my skin, but the anxiety churning inside me was stronger than any chill wind. Below, car horns blared incessantly, the neon signs of shops and cafes flashed, and the rhythmic sound of footsteps echoed, all seeming to magnify the sense of chaos and tension brewing in my heart. Tanya, my wife, stood beside me, a strained smile barely holding onto her face. She remained silent, yet her eyes held a weight I was afraid to decipher. We had planned this party for weeks. Every minor detail had been discussed and triple-checked. I thought that with all this effort, Megan would be happy, but now, that single, short, cold text message left me feeling utterly powerless. I thought back to the past few weeks. I spent hours every day coordinating with the venue, selecting the playlist, checking the guest list, ordering the cake, and picking out gifts that suited Megan's tastes. I kept telling myself she would feel my sincerity, that she would smile brightly, and that today would be a beautiful memory in her life. But now, all those plans felt like they were disintegrating before my eyes. I turned back to look at the framed picture hanging on the wall, a snapshot of Megan and me at a previous birthday, her smiling eyes sparkling with innocent happiness. I wondered, does she still see me that way? Does any of this effort mean anything to her anymore? A heavy, confusing mix of emotions flooded my mind. I sat down, my eyes fixed on the phone, a knot of worry and helplessness tightening around my chest. I asked myself if today, amid the twinkling lights of Philadelphia, there would be any moment like the one I had imagined, or if it would all just be a crushing disappointment. I remembered earlier evenings, when Megan was younger, running around the backyard, laughing carelessly, her eyes bright with simple joy. Now, I saw the change. She was older, more guarded, harder to read, and seemed to have learned how to keep her distance from people who genuinely wanted to care for her. I pressed hard one last time on the message, watching the words "don't call" glow on the screen. A part of me wanted to reply, another part just wanted to sink into silence, and in that precise moment, I knew today would not be like any day before it. A seemingly ordinary evening, amidst the neon glare and street sounds of Philadelphia, was slowly beginning to unfold a story I had never expected, a story about family ties, betrayal, shocking turns, and emotions I was entirely unprepared to face. Tanya's apartment was buzzing tonight, more vibrant than ever. Every detail had been meticulously prepared. White and gold balloons lined the walls, warm yellow light reflecting off the long table laden with food, pastries, and carefully arranged desserts. The three-tiered cake, elaborately decorated with the words, "Congratulations, Megan," stood in the center of the living room, a symbol of all the effort I had poured into this event. Megan appeared in a light blue dress, her subtly curled hair cascading over her shoulders, her large eyes shining with confidence mixed with a hint of hurt. She walked into the room, surveyed the scene, and offered a smile, but it didn't seem to be meant for me. That smile, I realized, was for everyone else, to show them that Megan was happy, that everything was perfect. But toward me, it felt like a cold, deliberate barrier. Guests began to gather, a few of Megan's high school friends, some of Tanya's close colleagues, and immediate family. Jack, Tanya's longtime friend, arrived with a charming smile but a fleeting, curious look in his eyes that I couldn't quite decipher. Sophie, Megan's cousin, was also present, carrying a small, pretty gift. her smile radiant but her eyes holding something hard to read. I stood in a corner, watching Megan chat, laugh, and interact with everyone. A mix of pride and anxiety gnawed at me. I knew that tonight, all eyes were on Megan and sometimes on me, too. I told myself, stay calm, Eric. As long as things go smoothly, she'll be happy. But then, things started to shift. As I walked to the small bar to get a refill, Megan unexpectedly approached, her voice just loud enough for me to hear. Eric, why do you feel the need to make everything so perfect? I was startled and turned around. She was looking at me with a sharp gaze, making no effort to hide her annoyance. I opened my mouth to explain, but before I could say anything, Megan turned away, resuming her conversation with her friends, leaving me standing stiffly in the middle of the room, feeling both embarrassed and confused. The tension in the air gradually intensified. Jack walked closer to me, took a sip of his wine, and commented in a suggestive tone, looks like we might have a few surprises in store tonight. Eric, I forced a strained smile, but inwardly, I was beginning to realize that things wouldn't go as expected. The small details, Megan's look, Sophie's smile, the way Tanya quietly observed all signaled an emotional storm brewing, a simmering conflict that was about to erupt. Soft background music played from the corner of the room, mingled with laughter and the clinking of glasses, but inside me, my heartbeat quickened with every time Megan came close, only to turn away. I thought back to the past few weeks, when I meticulously prepared every gift, every dish, every minor detail to make the party perfect. I told myself Megan would be happy, but now, all that seemed to be dissolving in a single moment, and then Megan called out loudly across the room, "Thank you, Eric, for the party. But are you sure all of this is really for me, or just to prove something?" All eyes snapped toward me. The space seemed to freeze. I could feel the tension radiating into every corner of the room. Every smile, every glance, every gesture from the guests now felt heavy, weighted with pressure I hadn't anticipated. A party meant to be a celebration of joy had suddenly become the starting point for deep-seated conflict. Sophie stepped close to Megan and whispered something that made Megan smile, but the girl's eyes flashed with a hint of mischief. Jack looked at me with an inscrutable grin, while Tanya stood still, her eyes full of observation, as if waiting to see how the whole thing would unfold. I could feel a brewing storm inside me, the mounting stress, the unexpressed conflicts, the words that could shatter the veneer of family harmony in minutes. And in that moment, I knew that this seemingly joyous evening was quickly becoming an emotional test, where every preparation, every effort, every ounce of affection I had given would be weighed and judged. After Megan's remark, the atmosphere in the living room froze over. I stood there, trying desperately to maintain my composure, but my heart was racing faster than ever. Every guest's eye was on me, waiting to see how I would react. Part of me wanted to explain, to tell her that everything I did stemmed from genuine affection, but another part realized Megan was ready to challenge me, ready to make everything incredibly uncomfortable. Megan turned her back and sauntered toward the drink table. She leaned down gently to pick up a glass, but her eyes never truly left me. I followed her, forcing a natural smile, but my voice trembled slightly as I asked, You don't like the party, Megan?" She curled her lip, her smile a mixture of derision and cold indifference. "It's not that I don't like it, it's just that sometimes people go overboard trying to prove a point, you know." I swallowed my rising anger, feeling a profound sense of helplessness wash over me. That comment wasn't just a challenge, it was a dagger plunged into my heart. I wondered if Megan truly understood the immense effort and emotional investment I had poured into this celebration. In the corner of the room, Sophie stole a glance at me, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, meticulously observing my every reaction. Jack, still standing near Tanya, took a sip of his wine, giving a slight nod, his expression suggesting, "This is going to be a long night." Tanya, my wife, remained silent, but I saw the worry in her eyes. She probably knew Megan was about to make things much more complicated. The party continued, but the ambience had drastically shifted. The cheerful conversations and laughter were now interspersed with tension, probing glances, and awkward silences. I walked over to the main table, picked up a glass of champagne intending to drink, but my hand was shaking as my eyes unintentionally met Megan's. She immediately turned away, as if to emphasize the distance she was creating. A moment later, Megan stepped up to the cake, preparing to blow out the candles. I intended to walk closer to offer congratulations, but she raised her head and looked me dead in the eye, her gaze sharp. "Eric, I appreciate the effort, but are you sure you understand me? Or is this all just for show?" A surge of anger mixed with deep disappointment flared within me. I wanted to scream, to tell her that every single thing I did came from a place of love, but I kept silent, only letting out a heavy sigh. It felt as though all my efforts were being instantly invalidated, and the rejection stung. Jack moved closer to me and whispered discreetly, "This is just the beginning. Eric, things are going to get a lot messier." I turned to look at Tanya. She was quiet, her hand lightly touching her wine glass, her eyes fixed on Megan and Sophie. I realized that what was supposed to be a joyful celebration had now turned into a subtle, emotional battleground, where every action, word and glance carried a profound meaning, elevating the tension for everyone involved. Megan finished blowing out the candles, and as everyone applauded, she looked right at me, her eyes full of defiance. "Thank you, Eric. But I guess you understand that things don't always go your way, right?" I nodded, the strained smile still plastered on my face, but my heart was in turmoil. I knew that tonight, things would not end peacefully. Megan had created a subtle yet powerful conflict, one strong enough to make me carefully consider every action, every word, and I knew that this seemingly normal evening, amidst the warm lights and forced laughter, was only the prelude to the conflicts, betrayals, and surprises I had never thought I would face. The air in the room thickened. The music played on, but it seemed to have lost its cheer. I stood there, taking a sip of wine, my eyes tracking Megan and Sophie, my heart pounding, a mixture of worry, disappointment, and tension coursing through me. I knew that in the next few hours, everything would change and no one could predict the next development. The atmosphere in the room tightened like a violin string, ready to snap. Megan stood before the cake, her gaze sweeping around the room, seemingly evaluating every person, every reaction. I fought hard to remain composed, but her previous words felt like thorns digging deep into my heart. I swallowed my anger and disappointment, took a long breath, and tried to focus on maintaining a smile, but it felt impossible now. Sophie, Megan's cousin, walked closer to her, her voice gentle yet laced with a subtle challenge. "Wow, Megan, Eric really went all out for you. He did all this for you, not for anyone else." Megan sneered, a spark of cunning flashing in her eyes. "Sure, Sophie, but is it always really for me, or just a way to project a certain image to everyone else?" I stood paralyzed, feeling my heart constrict. That statement didn't just challenge me, it caused all the guests to collectively hold their breath, and a heavy silence descended. I knew that tonight Megan was testing me, testing everyone around us. Jack approached me, his voice low and serious. "Eric, tonight is definitely going to be more complicated than you think. Brace yourself." Tanya stood nearby, her eyes tracking Megan, her hand lightly squeezing her wine glass. I looked at my wife, seeing the clear worry. She knew there was no avoiding the conflict. Megan was actively trying to seize control of the evening on her own terms. Then Megan turned to me, her voice loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Eric, I truly appreciate what you did, but did you ever stop to ask if I genuinely needed all of this? Or was it just about proving something to yourself?" A long, drawn-out sigh escaped me, echoing faintly in the crowded living room. I stepped closer to her, trying to keep my voice steady and calm. "Megan, everything I did came from genuine affection. I just wanted you to be happy. I just wanted today to be a memorable day for you." But Megan shook her head, her gaze still sharp, her tone challenging. "Do you honestly believe that? Or are you trying to make everyone see what a wonderful man you are? Be honest, Eric." An emotional storm surged within me. I looked around, seeing the guests' eyes, every single one fixed on me, the pressure mounting on my shoulders. Sophie was smirking, a mischievous look in her eyes, while Jack remained silent, his gaze carrying a subtle warning. Tanya still stood motionless, but her eyes glistened with anxiety. A moment of agonizing silence hung in the air, only the soft background music playing, but inside my mind, everything seemed to slow down. I realized this was no longer a simple graduation party. It had transformed into a spiritual challenge, where my efforts, my affection, and even my reputation were being weighed on a scale. And then, Megan delivered a statement that made everyone flinch. "You know, Eric, sometimes the grand gestures don't make people happy. Sometimes they just make people feel pressured, and they end up hating it." The entire living room went silent. A few people sighed softly, others raised their eyebrows. No one dared to speak. I stood there, feeling shock, disappointment, and anger all blended into an indescribable emotional cocktail. I knew that Megan wasn't just challenging me. She was forcing me to question the fundamental sincerity of all my efforts. Jack moved close to me again, whispering, "Don't trust appearances. Eric, the story isn't over yet." I turned back to Tanya, a silent plea in my eyes. She only shook her head lightly, offering a strained smile. I understood that this party was no longer about Megan or any gifts. It was about the underlying tensions within the family, where every word, every gesture, could become a catalyst. But Megan turned to Sophie, then looked back at me. We'll see who truly understands who tonight, and who is just putting on a performance for everyone else. Those words rang out like a thunderclap in the evening air, setting everyone in the room on edge. I knew this night would not end well. This was only the beginning of a chain of drama, potential betrayal, and surprises I had never imagined. The living room now felt suffocating. Every glance, every smile, every gesture became heavy, intermingled with the background music and the quiet clinking of glasses. I stood there, my heart pounding, tension and pressure coursing through my body. I knew that in the next few hours, things would only escalate, and I couldn't possibly predict the outcome. The air in the living room had become so thick that I could physically sense everyone's quickened breathing. Megan stood in the center, her gaze sharp, her fingers lightly tapping the surface of the three-tiered cake. She looked directly at me, her voice cold but loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Eric, I think tonight is the time we need to talk honestly, about everything." All eyes zeroed in on me. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure, but inside, a violent wave was crashing. I knew that one wrong word could make everything collapse. Sophie stood beside Megan, offering a faint, mocking smile, but her eyes glittered with curiosity. "That's right, Megan, let it all out. Eric definitely won't be able to dodge this one." I opened my mouth, but Megan quickly cut me off. "Don't you know, Eric, everything you've done, all the parties, the gifts, the sparkling lights, it's not for me. It's to prove to everyone that you're a good, caring person. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" The entire room fell silent. I felt my heart seize up, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I took a step toward Megan, my voice barely a tremor. You misunderstand, Megan. Everything I did was because I wanted you to be happy, not for anyone else." But Megan shook her head, her gaze like an arrow shot straight at me. "No, Eric. You just wanted other people to see it. You thought I'd be grateful. But honestly, I feel pressured, and I feel fake." A collective gasp echoed in the room. Tanya stood nearby, her hand tightly gripping her dress, her eyes filled with worry as she watched me. Jack remained close, sipping his drink, his expression a mixture of caution and expectation. Sophie smirked, a cunning smile suggesting she was waiting for my reaction. I felt anger, disappointment, and raw pain surge all at once. Everything I had prepared, every sacrifice, every feeling, felt invalidated by just a few words. I moved closer, my voice strained. "Megan, I never wanted you to feel pressured or fake. Everything I did was because I love you, and I genuinely wanted your happiness." Megan laughed, but it was a cold, bitter sound. "Love? Really, Eric? Or is it just a way to show off to everyone that you're the good guy?" Her words landed like a physical blow to my heart. I froze, feeling completely off balance. The tension in the living room was so acute I could hear the shallow breaths of every single guest. Then Megan stepped forward, her voice resolute. "Did you think I was still that naive little girl? No, I'm grown up now. And today I want everyone to see the truth, who truly cares, and who is just putting on an act." I realized that Megan had turned the party into a psychological war zone where my efforts, my affections, and my very reputation were all on trial. Part of me wanted to scream, to explain, to prove myself. But I knew Megan didn't just want words. She wanted to feel reality, action, and attitude. Sophie moved right up to me, whispering just loud enough to be heard. "Eric, she planned this. Today isn't just a party, it's a test for you." I swallowed my fury, forced a deep breath, and looked Megan straight in the eye. "Megan, I'm not trying to show off or prove anything to anyone. I wanted all of this. For you. I care about you, and today was meant only for your happiness." Megan held my gaze for a long moment, her eyes simultaneously challenging and probing. The room was silent, only the soft background music intertwined with everyone's hushed breathing. Then, she slowly smiled, but kept that sharp, knowing glint in her eyes. "We'll see, if you really understand me, Eric." The tension in the living room stretched to its breaking point. I knew the night was far from over, and Megan had successfully ignited a mental battle I now had to face. Everything from this point forward would depend on how I handled myself, my words, my actions, and my composure over the next few hours. I stood there, my hand lightly gripping the table edge, my heart pounding, tension and pressure flooding my body. This was the climax, where the drama, the emotion, and the family conflict reached their peak, and everything that lay ahead promised to be far more dramatic. The tension in the living room, following the climax, was still heavy, but gradually, small flickers of understanding began to filter through. Megan stood in the center, her gaze both sharp and wary, as if still probing my reaction. I took a deep, steadying breath, feeling the pressure on my shoulders ease only slightly. All eyes were on us. Every small smile, every gesture carried weight, and I knew this was the decisive moment to heal the emotional damage. I walked toward Megan, my voice low, slow, and striving for complete sincerity. Megan, I recognize you're feeling pressured. I also realize I made a mistake by thinking that only grand gestures would make you happy. I am genuinely sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable or stressed. Everything I did was simply because I want you to be happy, truly happy, not to prove anything to anyone. Megan looked at me, her sharp eyes tinged with examination, but a faint spark of belief was beginning to flicker there. She took a long breath, her voice measured. Did you really mean that, Eric? Not to show off or prove anything to others. Do you honestly understand me? I nodded, my voice firm. I do, Megan. I will listen to you. I will do things for you, not for anyone else's benefit. A moment of profound silence enveloped the room. Sophie stepped closer, her mischievous smile now holding a measure of genuine empathy. Well, looks like everyone is finally starting to figure things out a little. Jack stood nearby, sipping his wine, giving a soft nod, his expression a mix of relief and subtle warning. Good, but it's still a long road ahead. Eric, Tanya came over, placing a hand on my shoulder, her eyes full of comfort and reassurance. Eric, today wasn't easy for anyone, but seeing Megan like this, you handled that right. Megan finally offered a genuine smile, one that was no longer laced with mockery or challenge. She walked toward me, embracing me lightly, her voice quiet but sincere. Thank you, Eric, for trying to understand me today. It wasn't perfect, but I feel the real love now. I sighed, feeling a gigantic burden lift from my chest. The seemingly chaotic evening was gradually settling into a peaceful calm. The guests began to chat again, smiles reappearing on faces. The probing glances from before were now replaced by looks of warmth, shared experience, and mutual understanding. I watched Megan laughing and talking with Sophie, and for the first time, I realized every effort, every tension, and every challenge we just faced led to this precise moment, a moment of sincere understanding between us. I suddenly understood that it wasn't about the lavish parties or expensive gifts. It was about listening, understanding, and treating each other with an open heart. Jack approached me again, sipping his wine, a gentle smile on his face. Finally, some peace. But don't forget, Megan will always keep you on your toes. Eric, I chuckled, this time a genuine laugh, filled with relief and calm. Tanya put her arm around my waist, and we watched Megan and Sophie playfully interacting. I realized that every family has its own unique challenges, and today, we had navigated a massive wave together. Megan turned back to me, her eyes sincere. Eric, I know you'll always be there, and today I truly feel loved. Thank you. I gently nodded, feeling like a knot in my heart had finally been untied. The evening that had threatened to derail into chaos was now transitioning into serenity, yet still rich with profound lessons and emotions. I sighed, looked at Megan, and realized that genuine affection, active listening, and patience were the keys to resolving any conflict. The soft music played on, blending with the happy chatter and laughter, the warm lights reflecting on every face. I stood there, smiling, feeling a simple happiness, a feeling I knew would remain etched in our memories forever. As the soft background music drifted through the air, and the conflicts slowly subsided, I stood quietly in the living room, taking a deep breath, absorbing every sound and every light reflected on people's faces. Megan was standing near the cake, her eyes both playful and softened, her smile now utterly genuine, devoid of any sarcasm or defiance. I realized that this evening was more than just a graduation party. It was a profound lesson in affection, understanding, and how to preserve family bonds. Tanya stood beside me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, her voice low but warm. Eric, tonight wasn't just a party. It was a chance for our family to truly see each other, to realize things we hadn't noticed before. Megan has grown up, and you've learned how to be patient, how to listen, and how to love the right way. I looked at my wife, seeing her eyes glistening with pride and empathy. I realized that every challenge, every pressure, and every moment of tension was valuable, because it led us to this sincere moment of deep understanding and connection. Megan walked over, her eyes sparkling with joy and sincerity, her voice small but firm. Eric, today I felt truly cared for, not because of the gifts or the sparkling lights, but because you listened and understood me. Thank you. I nodded gently, feeling the pressure and anxiety completely melt away. I recognize that sometimes challenges aren't meant to break things, but rather to make us clearly see what matters most. Understanding and sincerity. Jack stood nearby, taking a final sip of wine, smiling. Tonight is definitely going to be an unforgettable memory. Seeing everyone happy now, it was worth getting through all the stress, wasn't it, Eric? I smiled, a real smile this time, filled with relief and calm. I looked around the room. The guests were back to chatting and laughing cheerfully. The scrutinizing looks from before were replaced by warm smiles, the light from the lamps reflecting on every face, creating a sense of peace and security. I watched Megan and Sophie giggling together, seeing for the first time the genuine bond between them, an affection that was both innocent and deeply sincere. I realized that every effort, every tension, and every challenge today led us to this moment of true comprehension. Megan turned back to me, her eyes gentle but still holding a playful spark. Eric, I know you'll always be there, and today I truly feel loved. Thank you. I smiled, feeling a persistent knot in my heart finally loosen. The evening that had threatened to turn into chaos was now transforming into a beautiful memory, full of lessons about family, love, and empathy. The music played on softly, but now merged with laughter, conversation, and the gentle clinking of glasses, creating a warm, peaceful atmosphere. I stood there, absorbing every detail, every emotion from Megan's eyes, Tanya's smile, to Sophie's mischievous yet sympathetic look, and the visible relief in Jack's gaze. In that moment, I realized, understanding is the bridge between hearts. Patience and listening are the keys to overcoming conflict. Genuine affection will always conquer pressure and doubt. I stepped out onto the balcony, standing next to Megan, looking up at the star-studded night sky. She let out a soft sigh, a smile on her face, her eyes filled with trust and happiness. I too took a deep breath, feeling the peace settle into every moment. Tanya joined us, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder, watching Megan and Sophie play, her eyes sparkling with contentment and pride. I smiled, realizing that the seemingly chaotic evening had become a living testament to the power of family love, understanding, and sincerity. I made a silent promise. No matter what challenges lay ahead, the lessons of today would be my compass, guiding us to face, listen, and love the right way. And that, truly, was the most important thing, not the gifts, the lights, or the extravagant party, but the real affection, empathy, and mutual understanding within the family. The evening closed in warmth, laughter, and the soft light reflected on every face. I stood there, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace, knowing that today's memory would stay with us forever. A memorable night, a valuable lesson, and a simple yet profound happiness.